Welcome to the explainer. Okay, think about this. What if you could take any old diesel engine, the workhorses in our trucks, our ships, or generators, and with one addition, make it cleaner, more powerful, and cheaper to run, all without replacing the engine itself? It honestly sounds a little too good to be true, right? Like some kind of magic bullet. Well, today, we're digging into the on-demand hydrogen technology that promises to do just that. We're going to find out how it works, what the real numbers look like, and whether this thing is a genuine game changer or just a bunch of smoke and mirrors. All right, so here's our game plan. First up, we're going to tackle the big problem, the fundamental dilemma that anyone who relies on diesel has to deal with. Then we'll get into the spark of a solution that on-demand hydrogen offers. After that, it gets really interesting. We'll put the hard science up against the big sales pitch. We'll also have to confront the one big nagging question mark around emissions. And finally, we'll look at the clever business model that might just make this whole thing go mainstream, before asking, what does this mean for the future?
Okay, first things first, let's set the stage. If your business depends on trucks, ships, or any kind of heavy machinery, you are wrestling with a very, very expensive and stubborn problem every single day. And this question right here, this gets to the absolute heart of it. How do you slash those insane fuel bills and meet ever tougher emission standards without having to buy a brand new, multi-million-dollar fleet? For so long, the only answer was a massive, costly upgrade. But what if there's another way? See, here's the dirty little secret of the diesel engine. A shocking amount of the fuel you pay for doesn't actually push your vehicle forward. It's only partially burned, turning directly into soot and pollution. That is your money and your engine's power literally going up in smoke.
So, how do you fix a fundamental problem like that? Well, this is where that spark of a solution comes in. Instead of a complete engine overhaul, the idea is to add one simple but incredibly powerful new ingredient to the mix. And that key ingredient is something called HHO gas. You can think of it as a perfect, high-energy mix of hydrogen and oxygen. And here's the cool part. It's created from a tiny bit of distilled water right there on the vehicle itself. Now, what's really important to get is that it's not replacing the diesel, it's acting like a super catalyst, a booster that helps the diesel fuel burn way faster and much more completely. And this just shows you how elegantly simple the whole process is. So first, the unit sips a little bit of power from the vehicle's own battery. Second, it uses that electricity for electrolysis, which is just a fancy word for splitting water into HHO gas. Third, that gas gets fed directly into the engine's air intake. And finally, boom, it mixes with the diesel, creating a much more powerful and complete burn. And one of the best parts is a key safety feature. Gas is only made when the engine is running, so you don't need any dangerous high-pressure storage tanks. It's all on demand. Here's what one of these modern units looks like in the real world. As you can see, it's basically a self-contained box that gets retrofitted onto the vehicle. It's not a whole new engine. It just connects to the battery for power and the air intake to deliver the gas. But the really smart part is the little computer brain inside that monitors everything and sends performance data up to the cloud. This means a fleet manager can literally sit at their desk and see their fuel savings and emissions cuts in real time.
Okay, so that's the theory. It sounds pretty great, right? But does it actually work out in the real world? This is where things get really interesting, because there's a pretty big gap between what the sober academic studies are reporting and what you'll find in a glossy sales brochure.
All right, this slide is where the rubber meets the road. We have to separate the science from the sell. Just take a look at these numbers. On the left, you've got the data from peer-reviewed scientific papers, and they show real, pretty significant gains. Fuel savings around 5 to 15%, a nice boost in power. But now, look at the commercial claims on the right. Those numbers are huge, up to 65% fuel savings, a payback period of just a few weeks. This right here is the critical gap you have to understand, the difference between what's proven in a controlled lab setting versus what's promised in a sales pitch. Now, while the results for fuel economy and most emissions look pretty good, there is one major catch that the science is very clear about. And yeah, it's not all good news.
And there it is. It turns out that making the combustion process hotter and more efficient can have an unintended side effect. It can actually create more nitrogen oxides, or NOx. That's a key ingredient in smog and a really harmful pollutant. Now, pretty much all the academic studies agree on this, and while some manufacturers claim their systems have solved this issue, it really remains the biggest scientific question mark hanging over this entire technology.
So with this whole scientific debate going on, plus a pretty hefty price tag, you might be wondering, why would any company decide to take the leap? Well, the answer isn't just in the tech. It's in a completely new way of paying for it.
A single one of these units can cost as much as $8,000.
Now, just imagine you're running a fleet of 100 trucks. You're talking about a huge upfront investment. Even if the fuel savings are good, that initial cost has always been the biggest barrier to getting this technology out on the road. This one question is completely changing the game. I mean, what if you could get all the benefits, the fuel savings, the lower emissions, the extra power, without having to write a massive check?
And this is how they do it. It's called the energy as a service model. And honestly, it's a total game changer. The provider comes in and installs all the equipment on your entire fleet for free, zero upfront cost. Then you just pay a monthly fee that comes directly out of the money you are now saving on fuel. The whole idea is that you're instantly cash flow positive. It completely flips the script and takes almost all the financial risk off the table for the fleet owner.
So let's pull back and take that final big picture view. What we have is an interesting technology with some promising data, but a tricky scientific catch, and it's all made possible by a very clever business model. So where does this actually fit in the massive global transition to cleaner energy?
Well, this kind of technology isn't just some one-off trick. It's actually an early sign of a massive shift. As this chart shows, global demand for hydrogen is set to just explode by the year 2050, especially for things that move. These diesel retrofits are really just one small piece of a much larger hydrogen revolution that's already getting started.
And that leaves us with the big question. Is this technology a vital bridge, a really practical way to clean up the millions of engines we already have right now? Or is it just a temporary patch, maybe even a detour on the much longer road to a truly zero-emission future? The answer isn't simple. It kind of forces us to ask another question. How long can we really afford to wait for a perfect solution, when a good enough solution might already be here?